All right, so let's dive into something that's both fun and super useful.
Okay.
Learning English with Netflix.
Sounds good.
I
Yeah.
mean, let's be real, you're probably already binge watching anyway, right?
Okay.
So why not turn that screen time into a learning experience?
Exactly. It's such a sneaky way to immerse yourself in English without it even feeling like you're studying.
Totally. And I mean, come on, think of all the amazing shows out there. You can learn while being entertained.
Right.
That's like a total win-win in my book.
Absolutely. And I mean, hey, you're here, so I'm guessing you're already motivated to up your English game.
For sure.
So let's talk strategy. How can you turn your Netflix time into this powerful language learning tool?
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
What makes Netflix such a good resource for this? Besides the obvious entertainment factor?
Well, when you're watching a show, you're not just passively listening. You're
Yeah.
actively engaging with the language, picking up on natural pronunciation, everyday slang, even cultural things that you wouldn't necessarily get from a textbook.
You know what? I've actually noticed that myself. Sometimes I pick up phrases from shows that I never hear in, like, my English classes.
It's true. It's like this secret path to learning real English, like the English that people actually speak.
Totally.
Now, I know you might be thinking,
Okay.
okay, this sounds great, but where do I even begin?
Right.
Don't worry, we've got you covered. We've put together a list of some top Netflix shows that are perfect for learning English.
Sweet. Okay, hit me with your top picks. I'm always looking for new shows to watch.
Okay, let's start with a classic,
Yep.
Friends. This show is super popular with English learners, and for a good reason.
Yeah?
The dialogue is clear, the vocabulary is everyday, and it's all about those relatable situations like friendships and relationships,
Mm-hmm.
which are great topics to learn vocab for.
Yeah, I've heard so much about that whole, like, Friends effect on language learning. But isn't recommending Friends kind of obvious? I feel like everyone's already seen it.
You'd be surprised. Even if
Uh,
you've seen it before, watching it with a focus on the language can give you a whole new perspective.
That's a good point. Okay, so what about something for someone who wants to, like, soak up that British accent?
Oh, I see you.
I'm a sucker for a good British drama.
Well, then you have to check out The Crown. It's a historical drama about Queen Elizabeth II.
Right.
So you'll not only hear those perfect British accents, but you'll learn a ton about British history and culture, too.
Ooh, The Crown. It's like Netflix's most expensive drama series ever. But isn't the language a bit too advanced for most learners?
Hmm.
It's all about royalty and politics.
It's true. The language is pretty formal, but that's actually a good thing.
Okay.
It exposes you to a wider range of vocabulary and grammar. Plus, the story is so good, you'll be hooked from the first episode. Trust me, the subtitles will be your best friend here.
Guggy, you've convinced me. The Crown is going on my watch list. Now, I'm also thinking about those days when I don't have time for a full episode. What about a show with, like, shorter episodes? Maybe something a bit lighter.
The Big Bang Theory is perfect for that. It's a sitcom with those short, funny episodes.
Love.
Packed with witty dialogue and a mix of everyday language and sciencey terms.
Okay, that sounds fun. A fun way to learn some new vocabulary.
Yeah.
I'm all about injecting some humor into my learning routine. Speaking of injecting, though, I'm a huge fan of medical dramas.
Yeah.
Anything you'd recommend for that genre?
For sure. Grey's Anatomy. It's a classic. It's a medical drama that follows these surgical interns and residents. Be warned, though, it can get pretty addictive.
Addictive is good. I could already see myself, like, learning all these medical terms.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got a good mix of shows here. But it's not enough to just passively watch, right? We need some strategies to actually learn from them.
You're so right. Watching is only the first step. So let's talk about some active strategies that you can use to really maximize your learning with Netflix.
Okay, I'm ready to turn my Netflix binges into, like, full-on learning sprees. What's the first strategy?
Let's talk subtitles.
Ooh, subtitles.
They're like a secret weapon for language learners.
Okay, I am a big fan of subtitles, I have to admit.
Yeah.
But I usually just kind of keep them on in English without really thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a better way to use them for learning?
Absolutely. You got to think of subtitles as a tool that you can adjust depending on your level.
Okay.
Like if you're a beginner, starting with subtitles in your native language can be helpful.
Makes sense.
You'll still hear the English, but you'll have that backup to understand what's going on.
Yeah, like a safety net while you're getting used to the language.
Exactly. Then as you get better, you can switch to English audio with English subtitles.
Okay.
This helps you connect the spoken word with the written word,
Right.
which is going to improve both your comprehension and your pronunciation.
Yeah, so you're basically training your brain to recognize the words both visually and, like, when you hear them.
Yes. And then for a real challenge, try watching with no subtitles.
Ooh, no subtitles.
This forces you to really rely on your listening skills. It might sound intimidating at first, but it's amazing how quickly your ear adapts.
I don't know if I'm ready to ditch the subtitles completely yet. That just seems way too hard.
It definitely depends on your level.
Right.
But even if you just try it for like a few minutes at a time, it's a great way to push yourself
Okay.
and really test your comprehension. A lot of learners find that once they get used to watching without subtitles, they actually prefer it.
Really? Wow. Okay. I'll have to give it a try. So subtitles are key. What's the next strategy?
Note-taking. Don't underestimate the power of a good old-fashioned notebook.
Oh, yeah.
Pause the show whenever you hear a word or phrase that you don't know and write it down.
Okay.
Then look it up. Try to understand what it means within the context of the scene.
I do that sometimes, but I have to admit I'm not always the best at it.
Right.
It's so tempting to just keep watching and hope that I'll pick it up eventually.
I know it's easy to get caught up in the story.
Right.
But trust me, those few seconds that you take to jot down some new words can make a world of difference.
Okay.
And there are some great tools out there to help you with this. Like Preply has this awesome free vocabulary app. You can use it to make flashcards and practice the words you've learned.
Okay. I'm convinced note-taking is officially back on my learning agenda.
Hmm.
What else can I do to really make the most of my Netflix time?
Rewatching, it might sound a little counterintuitive, but
Yeah.
watching an episode more than once can actually be a really smart learning strategy.
Really, I usually just move on to the next episode as soon as I'm done.
I know, right? We're all about that instant gratification. But think about it. The first time you watch, you're focused on the plot. But the second time, you can pay more attention to the language.
Right.
And then the third time, you might even start to notice these little nuances in like the acting or the directing.
Yeah, that's true. I've definitely noticed that I pick up on more details the second time I watch a movie. So I guess it's the same with language learning.
Yeah.
Okay, so rewatching is a yes. What's next?
Speaking practice.
Yeah.
One of the best ways to improve your fluency is to actually speak the language. And yes, you can practice speaking with Netflix.
Wait, how do you practice speaking with Netflix? Am I talking back to the TV?
Not quite, although that's not a bad idea if you're feeling brave.
Uh-huh.
What I mean is, choose a character that you really like and try repeating their lines out loud.
Okay.
Like, try to copy their pronunciation and intonation, really embody their way of speaking.
Oh, that's cool. I could channel my inner Olivia Pope from Scandal.
Yeah.
Or maybe try out a British accent from The Crown.
Exactly. It's such a good way to work on your pronunciation and fluency,
Yeah.
and you're learning from native speakers, which is like gold.
That's awesome. It's like having a personal language coach right there in your living room.
Okay, so we've got subtitles, note-taking, rewatching, and speaking practice. Any other strategies we should know about?
Those are the main ones, but there's one more thing I want to really emphasize.
Okay.
Don't just rely on Netflix for your English learning. You got to think of it as like a supplement to other learning methods.
So you're saying Netflix is great, but it shouldn't be my only tool.
Exactly. It's important to have a well-rounded approach.
Makes sense.
Think of it this way. Netflix can help you with listening, comprehension, vocabulary, pronunciation. But it's not going to necessarily teach you grammar rules or give you the chance to practice speaking with a real person.
Right. Okay, so what else should I be doing to round out my learning?
Well, practicing speaking with a tutor or a language partner is super important.
Okay.
It gives you the chance to have actual conversations, get feedback on your pronunciation, work on those specific areas where you need a little extra help.
I've been thinking about getting a tutor, but honestly, I'm a little intimidated. What if I make a ton of mistakes?
That's totally normal. Everyone makes mistakes when they're learning a new language.
True.
The important thing is to not be afraid to just speak up and practice. A good tutor will make you feel comfortable and create a safe space for you to learn.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
What about finding a language partner? Is that a good idea?
Absolutely. Language partners can be amazing because you can both learn from each other and keep each other motivated. Plus, it's a fun way to connect with people from different cultures.
I like that. Where can I find language partners? Oh, there are so many options. There are tons of online platforms and apps that connect language learners.
Okay.
You can also check out local language exchange groups,
Right.
or even just ask around among your friends and colleagues. You never know who might be interested in learning your native language.
Those are some great suggestions. I'm definitely going to look into that. Now, before we move on, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, cultural nuances. You said Netflix can help with that. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Of course. Learning a language isn't just about memorizing words and grammar. It's also about getting to know the culture and the people who speak that language.
Hmm.
And Netflix can be like a window into all these different cultures.
I totally get that. When I watch British shows, for instance, I notice differences in their humor, their social customs, even just the way they talk to each other.
Exactly. And those are the kind of subtle things you wouldn't pick up from a textbook. By watching shows from different countries, you're exposed to so many perspectives, different customs, ways of life. It's like taking a virtual trip around the world from your couch.
I love that. And honestly, sometimes I feel like I learn more about other cultures from watching shows and movies than I do from reading books or articles.
It's true. It's a different kind of learning. It's more immersive, more experiential. You're not just reading about a culture. You're seeing it come to life on the screen. You're hearing the language being spoken. You're seeing how people interact. You're feeling the emotions.
Yeah, and that kind of emotional connection can really change how we understand and connect with other cultures.
For sure. It's one thing to read about a tradition, but it's another thing entirely to see it play out in a story, to understand why people do it, to feel how it affects them.
So by watching shows from different cultures, we're not just learning a language, we're actually gaining a deeper understanding of the world and the people in it.
Exactly. It's all about expanding our horizons, challenging what we think we know, becoming more open-minded and empathetic. And in a world that's becoming more and more connected, those qualities are super important.
Couldn't agree more. This has been so insightful. I'm actually feeling inspired to watch more shows from different countries. Now, before we wrap up, is there anything else our listeners should keep in mind as they start their Netflix language learning journey?
Just remember to have fun with it. Learning a language should be enjoyable. So choose shows that actually interest you. Experiment with different learning techniques. And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Good advice.
The more you enjoy it, the more likely you are to keep going and reach those language goals.
Okay, fantastic. Now for the final part of our deep dive, let's talk about actually putting all of this into practice. All right, so we've covered so much ground here, like why Netflix is amazing for learning English, some top shows, and those key strategies to make it really work. But now let's get down to business. How can our listeners actually take all of this information and put it into practice?
It really starts with picking the right show. Like, don't just go for something because it's super popular or everyone's talking about it or whatever. You know what I mean? Go for a show that actually interests you. So think about it. What genres do you usually enjoy? What do you usually watch?
Okay, good question. I really like mysteries and thrillers.
Yeah.
Like, give me a good whodunit or a suspenseful drama, and I'm hooked.
Okay.
But I also love comedies
Yeah.
and shows that deal with, like, social issues. You know, something that makes you think.
Perfect. So knowing what you like, that's half the battle.
Yeah.
Now think about your level. Are you a beginner, intermediate, or more advanced? Where would you say you are on that spectrum?
I'd say I'm somewhere between beginner and intermediate. Like, I can understand the basics, but I still struggle with some of the vocabulary and grammar sometimes.
Okay, that's really helpful to know. So based on what you're into and your level, I might recommend a show like Broadchurch.
Okay.
It's a British crime drama.
Ooh.
With a really engaging story and pretty clear dialogue. The accents might be a bit challenging at first. But remember, the subtitles are your friend.
Yes. True Broadchurch it is. Okay, so you mentioned setting realistic goals earlier. What does that actually look like?
It's all about finding a pace that works for you and not overwhelming yourself.
Right.
So instead of trying to binge watch an entire season, maybe start with like one episode a day.
Okay.
Or even half an episode. Focus on understanding the main plot points and identifying maybe just a few new words.
That sounds doable.
Yeah.
I can definitely commit to an episode a day. And what about when I get stuck? Like, it's so tempting to just keep watching and hope that I'll eventually figure it out.
I know, it's so tempting. But resist that urge. Those moments when you're confused, those are like golden opportunities for learning. So when you come across a word or a phrase you don't know, pause the show, write it down, look it up, and then try to use it in a sentence. You can even make flashcards with Preply's vocab app to help you remember.
Yeah, those are great tips. I'm realizing that it's all about, like, being an active participant, you know, not just passively watching.
Exactly. It's all about that active learning. And remember, don't be afraid to rewatch scenes a couple of times. It really helps to cement those concepts in your mind. Plus, you might catch something you missed the first time around.
That's true. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Now I have a question. How do I practice speaking if I'm watching alone? You mentioned mimicking the characters earlier, but are there other ways to make it more interactive?
That's a great question. Here's a fun thing you could try.
Okay.
After a scene, try to summarize what happened out loud, just as if you were explaining it to a friend. This forces you to use the vocab and grammar you just heard. You can even record yourself and then listen back to see where you can improve.
That's such a good idea. It's like turning my living room into a language lab. Okay, now you also mentioned supplementing Netflix with other learning methods.
Yeah.
What are some examples of how to actually do that?
Absolutely. Think about incorporating activities that target different skills.
No.
So if you want to get better at speaking, maybe find a language partner or join a conversation group. If you're having trouble with grammar, sign up for an online course or work through a grammar book. Find what works for you.
So it's about finding a good balance and making a learning plan that fits my needs.
Exactly. And remember, learning a language is a journey, not a destination.
Mm-hmm.
There will be times when you're frustrated and times when you feel like you're making so much progress. The key is to stay motivated, keep practicing, and celebrate every little win along the way.
I love that perspective. It's a good reminder that it's a process, not a race.
Exactly. And don't forget to enjoy it. Learning English with Netflix is such a fun way to combine education and entertainment.
So true.
So grab your popcorn, find a show you love, and just dive into a whole world of language learning and cultural exploration.
I am so ready. This has been such a great deep dive. I'm feeling so inspired and ready to get started with my Netflix language learning adventure.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. Remember, consistency is key. Even just 30 minutes a day can make a big difference in the long run.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into learning English with Netflix. We hope you found it helpful, inspiring, and maybe even a little bit fun. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those subtitles rolling.